Hi, and welcome to Terribly Fun Films. And we are in the home stretch of our Dragon Con countdown. There's this review you're watching now, and next week will be the final review that I'm doing for Dragon Con. And when it's released next Friday, I'll already be at Dragon Con. I'll already be there. I'll already have done some things, hopefully met some celebrities or seen some cool panels or whatever it is I'm doing. If you're at Dragon Con, find me. It'll be fun. Anyways, today's movie is probably one of the most well-known films I'm going to review for this countdown, and perhaps one of the most infamously goofy bad movies I'm going to review for Terribly Fun Films altogether, and that is the William Gibson-based Johnny Mnemonic. Johnny Mnemonic is a 1995 cyberpunk action film starring Keanu Reeves, Dina Meyer. She's the reason I'm doing this. She's going to be at Dragon Con, and I cannot wait. And Ice-T, Dolph Lundgren, Henry Rollins, and a heroin-abusing dolphin. It's a very confusing movie, to say the least. It bombed when it came out. It got terrible reviews when it came out. I grew up watching it, which probably explains why I do this type of a show to begin with. So, with all that out of the way, what do I think of Johnny Mnemonic? Johnny Mnemonic is about the titular character who's a data courier. People hire him to move sensitive data around in his brain. He had to have a part of his brain removed in order to make the storage capacity for the computer that holds it installed. This means he cannot remember most of his childhood. He's hired by some people, and while they're doing the download, they get attacked by the Yakuza, and this leaves Johnny without any idea of who can take the information out of his head. So he only has 24 hours to figure out who can do it, why everybody wants it so bad, and wants to kill him because he has it. Along the way, he meets up with Jane, who has the black shakes, which is an epidemic that has been going around the world due to overexposure from technological radiation. Her doctor friend Spider has figured out a way of at least keeping these sorts of episodes at bay, and he may or may not be able to help Johnny in his quest. There's a gang of low-techs, which are a group of people who believe that technology is good, but only in certain doses, and if it goes beyond a certain capability, it's no longer good. Thus, they're not anti-technology. They are anti-technology that will, give you a terrible disease, like the black shakes. So they're called low-techs. And they're battling against the corporations of the world, where everything's online and evasive and that sort of thing. And these plots all converge into the climax, obviously. And in terms of plot structure, the movie moves very well. Whatever issues one might have with the dialogue or the CGI effects nowadays, the acting, or anything like that, one cannot say the movie's ever really dull. It hits the ground running and rarely lets up, which is both a really good and really bad thing. It's good because we, the audience, can stay invested and not question too many things, despite there being some pretty big plot holes when you really stop and think about it. And it also means that even though the characterizations aren't the strongest, it doesn't matter too much because they're always engaged in something. a fight, running away from the Yakuza, talking to a cybernetically enhanced heroin-storing dolphin. Swear to God, that's in the film. I'm not making that up. Swear to you. There's always something going on, so you're just always on the move, on the move, on the move. So, story structure-wise, it's actually fairly sound. He gets hired, he goes to the arranged meeting place, they download stuff, those people die, he needs to figure out how to get it out of his head, so he goes to the only clue he has, Newark. That's not a bad setup, and from there, how things happen, how the characters mean stuff, never feel contrived. And I think that's mostly due to William Gibson himself writing the screenplay based on his own short story. Of course, the story will be well represented. I'll get a bit more into that in a little bit. And of course, it'll make sense because you have the actual writer of the material you're adapting doing the adaptation. So it's coming from a place that gets what the fans want from this. The flip side of that, William Gibson wrote the screenplay, and writing a book or a short story is very different than writing a non-opinionated news article about a current event, which is very different than writing up a review like when I'm recording now, although I don't write my reviews, point stands, which is very different than writing a movie, which is very different than writing a TV show, which is very different than writing poetry, which is very different than writing plays. I go through all that to explain that his dialogue sucks. Dialogue is awful. It's exposition heavy, it's heavy-handed, it's goofy as hell. It just does not work at all. And there's some contention for that. Reportedly, the movie got taken away from the director and the screenwriter, Robert Longo and William Gibson, and was re-edited entirely by the studio without their consent. So the version that's available to us, to the audiences, is not necessarily the version that was meant to be. It's not the scenes that was filmed. It's not the context they were filmed in. That sort of a thing. So, much like with my hatred of Suicide Squad, where they took it away and re-edited it to make it more fun. All you did was add pop songs over serious scenes. That doesn't make it more fun. That means your pop song doesn't fit the tone of your movie. Imagine something similar, but at least keeping the tone properly, if that makes sense. As far as Longo's direction, it's not that good. There are one or two sequences that I'll get into in just a moment that are pretty solid. But he had a background in special effects heavy music videos, and it definitely shows. As in, the best moments of the film are edit heavy, frantic action scenes. Like when Jane and Johnny are escaping and the low-techs come to help them out because Jane is a friend of theirs. Things like that. Really fun escape scene where they're running from the Yakuza, that kind of thing. The ending fight sequence with the character of the street preacher, also really good. Its style's very obvious in terms of its influences are fairly obvious in that sort of style, and it works. But anytime the movie slows down and wants our characters to get to know each other and stuff, the direction is flat. The energy just dies immediately. There are some directors who can keep up that sort of energy even in a drama, or at least a more dramatic scene in an action film, and that's what keeps it so intense. Catherine Bigelow is amazing at that sort of thing, where even if there's no action going on, you're still inside the characters' minds, and therefore things are still intense, and that was none of that here. So the dramatic scenes, really don't work. Couple that with dramatic scenes being mostly exposition, as already explained, it's bland. Again, you're never bored because these scenes are not the focus of the film at all, but when there's not actually an action scene going on, the movie's bland. It will probably not surprise you if you've seen Johnny Mnemonic to know that Keanu Reeves, as our main character, was in fact nominated for a Golden Raspberry, aka the Razzies, for his performance in this movie. And with the exception of one scene, it's the best scene in the movie acting wise, and I'll get to that in just a moment, I can totally understand why that happened. People have accused Keanu Reeves of being wooden, being blank, being not a very good actor. And I disagree with that to a certain degree. In the right role, Keanu Reeves does that role in a way no one else can, meaning he was the only person to be able to do it. John Wick, his character of Neo in the first Matrix film, I'm only claiming the first one because I hate the other two and I haven't seen them in long enough time to actually decide whether he was good in those films or not. Speed, chain reaction, he can be utilized very well. He's good at very specific things. But when he's bad, here, Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, he doesn't sound human, he sounds like a robot. That kind of works for him here, given what the character is, given what the character is suffering, which is great. But it's, given the romance that blossoms between he and the character of Jane, it doesn't work. The two actors, he and Dina Meyer, have no chemistry together. And because he does come off as sort of robotic, you don't see what she would see in him. If they had chemistry, it'd be easier to forgive. But there's nothing in terms of characterizations or in their chemistry that makes you buy into it. So it's an unnecessary thing in the film entirely. There is one amazing scene with Keanu Reeves though, because Keanu Reeves' ticket to giving a great performance is being allowed to freak the fuck out. John Wick, it's a very internalized performance. It's a very strong performance. It's not a dialogue-heavy performance until he's kidnapped and being tortured in a church by the bad guys, and he yells, "People have been asking if I'm back." And you know what? I think I'm back. And he just loses it. And it's amazing, and it's awesome. And he has a scene like that, where he just is so fed up with the shit going on in his life, he just yells about everything. He wants room service. He wants his shirts laundered. And it's glorious and awesome, and it's the one time Keanu Reeves feels energetic and has a personality in the film. And I don't think it's for a lack of trying, because that scene proves it. Because I don't know, in terms of direction given, what changed about everything else in that one scene. So I think there's just something about that moment that connected with him. But it's great. Dina Meyer plays Jane. Most people know her from Starship Troopers, Dragonheart. I probably saw Dragonheart before I saw this movie. But I definitely saw this movie before I saw Starship Troopers. So to me, for the longest time, she was the lady from Dragonheart in this. And she's actually pretty good here. You can just tell right away the charisma and screen presence that she has that would go on to make her such a star. And she kicks ass in the action scenes. She is the one actor in the movie to really pull off all facets of the character and the story at play when she is suffering from the black shapes. when she's having a heart-to-heart with Spider, her doctor friend character. When she's in the action scenes, she does each one very, very well. She does have some pretty good one-liners to boot. It's easy to see why she became a star. Even in this bad movie, she's really good. Spider is played by Henry frickin' Rollins, who's also mostly good here. There are definitely some line readings that sound a bit forced, but I would say more times than not in the film, he gives a strong, empathetic performance, even if he's fumbling over the mumbo-jumbo-y things he has to say for the futuristic world of the movie to make sense. Ice-T plays the leader of the Low-Techs, J-Bone. Now, every role I've ever seen Ice-T in, he's Ice-T playing a type of character, no exception here. But Ice-T's really great at playing himself. Ice-T is good with one-liners. He's good in action scenes. He gives amazing side-eye. He can roll his eyes at the most ridiculous shit and make you laugh no matter what. It's awesome. And he does bring that here. So when he's on screen, the movie livens up more so than when he's not. I mentioned the character of the street preacher earlier. He's played by Dolph Lundgren, who is not very good here. His accent sounds weird and stiff. And when he's being vaporized by the echolocation from the heroin dolphin, he sounds as if he simply got his tie caught in a taxi cab, and not like he's literally being fried to death with sonar, basically is what's going on there. It's really weird. He's big, he's imposing, and because of that, he does come off as a credible threat, but the acting's not there to make the crazier things of the character really shine through. I don't know how I didn't mention Udo Kerr's in this movie earlier, but Udo frickin' Kerr's in this movie. He plays Johnny's handler, the person who sets up all the meetings and the downloads, or where to go after the initial download to get it out of your brain, that sort of thing. Named Ralphie, and Udo Kerr's only okay. He's alright. He's not awful, but it kind of feels like he's acting in a different movie than everybody else, which adds for some unintentional humorous moments, but it doesn't work as a whole. Finally, we have our two main bad guys, Takahashi and Shinji. Takahashi is played by Takeshi Kitano, and he's good. There's an ending scene, it's fairly dramatic for the character, that he totally sells. But in the earlier fight sequences, he's only okay, and his reaction to discovering that there's a ghost in the machine type thing going on, he's so flat that you would think he was trying to channel his inner Keanu Reeves. Shinji is played by Denise Akiyama, and he's really good. He's a really fun bad guy. He's just a henchman, but he does have some lines. He does make some deals, and he gets a pretty cool fight scene at the end. So he works out very nicely. Brad Fiddel's score is actually one of the elements of the film that aged really, really well. The score works. It is EMD, electronica type heavy, which is just what you did for music back then to accompany things like this. But he mixed it up with lots of strings and a more orchestral sound than say something like Hackers. So it actually does give the film a big, epic feel, even when other parts of the production really fail at that. Francois Pertat's cinematography is really bad. Shockingly bad. The movie looks flat and not that engaging. The color schemes are dull and lifeless with a few exceptions. And it just It feels like, due to the crazy production history I mentioned at the intro of the video, however small, there's much more to it that I didn't mention. It feels like he just kind of gave up and didn't care. And the movie's not necessarily ugly to look at, but it's not striking in a way Blade Runner is, and that's the closest comparison for the kind of vibe they're going for. Roland Sanders' editing is pretty good, actually. There is one sequence that's terribly edited. That's the initial meeting and download of the data. But after that, the action scenes are well handled. The pacing is very nice, and it finds a good, solid rhythm. So it just keeps going and going, which is really what you want in a movie like this. The best things about the film are the art, production, set, and costume designs. Production design was by Nilo Rodis-Jamero. The art direction was by Dennis Davenport. The set direction was by Enrico Campana. And the costumes were by Olga Dimitrov. And they are the reason the film's visual style doesn't make you want to claw out your eyeballs. Because the sets are big and sprawling, even when poorly filmed, you can tell they feel lived in, they feel realistic to the world at hand, and that's awesome. The costumes, likewise, feel organic to the characters. They work in context. They work within context of the world, and they sell something that the script and the direction are unable to, and that is the cyberpunk aesthetic. It comes in the form of an action film like this, and that's not easy to do, especially when the movie is so goofy, you guys, as this is. Finally, we come to the thing that's been on everyone's brains to begin this review. How did the CGI hold up? When I first saw this movie, I remember thinking the CGI was not that terrible. Maybe it's because I was young, or maybe because this film is 22 years old now, but the CGI, and there's a lot of CGI, looks super awful now. It looks rubbery, it moves jerkily, with a few exceptions, and the visual idea of what the internet and that sort of thing looks like in the future is just so silly. For example, there's a lot of the climax takes place within the cyberspace worlds, and Keanu Reeves' character is in there. And it doesn't look like a version of Keanu Reeves, but instead, it's like a cylinder. Think a pencil with part of its eraser dipped in like that, right? And that's what it looks like the entire way down. His arms look that, his legs look that, his body looks like that, and they just kind of wrap his face around it. Oh my god, it's hilarious. It's so funny. Is Mnemonic a good movie? No. No, it is not. It's barely competently put together. Barely escapes that. Most of the acting is bad. The CGI, which was the big highlight of the movie, did not age very well at all. The cinematography is flat. The lighting is dull. But is it a terribly fun film? Fuck yes. Oh, so much yes. Dina Meyer's really kick-ass. Takashi Kitano, also very appealing and fun in his role. Ice-T definitely gets some unintentional laughters out of it. And the whole movie moves so fast with so many action scenes that you don't really have time to stop and pick apart the entire plot until after it's over. Great production design, great art design, great set design, great costumes. Will leave you with a nice lasting impression of what Cyberpunk at least looks like and feels like in that sort of thing if you're unfamiliar with it. And far more importantly, if you're a fan of bad movies, this was bad. The leads don't have chemistry together, the romance is forced, the plot is full of holes. You're going to have so much fun with this thing that I wholeheartedly endorse it. It's a movie with a climax that involves a cybernetically enhanced dolphin that uses heroin. I don't know what else I can say to make you want to see this movie. Because if that's not enough for you, then we have very different priorities than what we want in our movies. As always, I've been your host, Bobby. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week for the last Dragon Con Countdown review.